We're live for the Thursday, June 18th, 2020 version of the Remodelers show. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I've got the professional microphone ready. I've got the topics that we're going to cover ready. And my goal today is to share something with you during this next fast-paced 30 minutes that will help you improve your remodeling business, maybe even your life. Because you improve your business, you can improve your life. I know that's a tall task, but we'll see if we can do it. We're going to start out with a little intro from a longtime client of mine.
Good morning. This is Stuart Kavner with Innovative Builders and Remodelers here in Rockford, Michigan. And this is the Remodelers Show, hosted by the fun, bubbly, and very inspiring Kyle Hunt.
Ooh, thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Stuart. The fun, bubbly, very inspiring. Thank you, Stu. Kyle Hunt. I've been touching a little bit about the person who is sharing the intro. Today, a good chunk of the show is I'm going to dig in and tell you about Stuart. So get ready for that. But first, we got a quick little quote of the day. Quote of the day. It's from none other than the fun, bubbly, very inspiring Kyle Hunt. It's in all caps on the screen. For those of you looking on the screen, it says, raise your stinking markup 1% today. Raise your stinking markup 1% today. And I'll give you just a quick illustration of this. Yes, there's a difference between markup and margin. They are not the same thing. Yes, there's a lot of different ways to attack this. Understood. A lot of you just need to hear, you need to charge more. You need to charge more. As an example, if you have $20,000 of costs on a project and you have a 50% markup, you would take $20,000 of cost times 1.50, which would give you a selling price of $30,000. Okay. You increase that 1% and you go $20,000 of cost, still the same, times 1.51, your selling price will be $30,200. You would be charging the client $200 extra, and there would be $200 of extra gross profit for you on that project. If you had $500,000 of costs, that would be an additional $5,000 of gross profit. $1 million, that would be another $10,000 of gross profit. And I would imagine, and my experience tells me, that you're not going to not sell those projects over that little increase. So my point with that quote of raise your stinking markup 1% today is 1% is just a small amount. It's not going to make a big dent in your ability to sign clients, but over time, that little 1% is going to add up to thousands of dollars. And it's going to change that mindset you have. So much of charging more or charging what you should be charging for your remodeling services comes down to just doing it and having the confidence to do it and saying, doggone it, I'm worth every penny and more. And you need to continue to drive up. For most of you, you need to continue to drive up what you're charging for your work so that you can afford to invest in your business, to invest in your team, to be more profitable. So that is the quote of the day. Raise your stinking markup 1%. And it's all in caps. I'm not yelling it, but I am being a little emphatic. I love seeing somebody go, you know what? I just went into my estimating software or my estimating spreadsheet and I just knocked it up 1%, Kyle. Keep doing that. Keep doing that. Somebody commented, I post that quote on the Remodelers Community private Facebook group. You can find that at remodelerscommunity.com. And somebody said, I increased my hourly rate in my estimating $3 an hour on Monday this week. I have so many leads and so many opportunities. I said, you know what? I'm going to increase that. And then he started tossing in some numbers of going, just by doing that, I'm going to make X amount more of this for the rest of this year. That basically equates to paying for 2 weeks off where I can go on vacation with my family. This stuff matters. It definitely matters. So consider that. Raise it 1% today. Cool. Moving on to the next part of the Remodelers show.
Let Kyle tell you about a remodeler on the rise.
I'm going to tell you about a remodeler on the rise. Stuart Kavner with Innovative Builders and Remodelers was the person who kindly left that introduction to the Remodelers show today. And when I went to the International Builders show, I feel like some radio hosts kind of shuffle the paper like that. It kind of is just a thing they do. I was trying to be super quiet about it, but I think that's like a professional radio announcer's thing. So I just did it. I folded that sheet over. When I was at the International Builders Show, I did this session in January called From Swinging the Hammer to Running the Business. And I featured 3 of my longtime clients and kind of walked through how did these 3 gents go from being out in the field swinging the hammer to actually running their business and growing a tremendously profitable business. One of the gentlemen that I featured was Stu. And what I did in preparation for that presentation was just kind of go through and think through, okay, where was he? What were the key things? Anytime you go from, kind of clunky, just getting by business to a really successful, profitable business, it's a combination of 1,000 different things, right? It is all of these little things. But when you really dissect it and look under the hood, a lot of times there are some really key core things that were changed that resulted in 80% of the change. That whole 80-20 principle, right? 20% of the actions resulted in 80% of the results. In the inverse of that is the 80-20, but so often that's true. So what was that 20% that resulted in 80% of the improvement? And I have several things here, and we'll just spend a little bit of time going through each related to Stu. One of the things, and I put it in here, and it relates to the quote of the day. He raised his markup. I remember early on talking to Stu and asking him what he charged and having a little bit of back and forth on that. And, well, I do this. Yeah, I sometimes do that. Well, it depends on this. And it was pretty wishy-washy. And one of the things we did early on is he understood he was not charging enough for his services, and we increased his markup. That was a key to him being able to move from out in the field to continuing to grow and invest in the business. That was one of the keys. We already covered that a little bit. Number 2, he changed his sales process and became a better salesperson. Stu's a very personable guy. I haven't met anybody that doesn't love Stu. And he went about his sales process just in a very relatable way. You know, he had some expertise. He walked people through, but there was no, I wouldn't use the word professionalism. There wasn't a well thought out process that he was walking people through. He was chasing everything that kind of came in. There wasn't a lot of qualification. He wasn't differentiating himself. He kind of looked and talked and acted the same when it came to the questions he asked and the proposal he put together. And one of the things he did is he really changed his sales process to become a better salesperson. He implemented things like getting out a project discovery sheet instead of a blank sheet of paper when you have that initial phone call. He sent out a professional appointment confirmation email between that initial phone call and the in-person meeting. You know, thank you cards out after the in-person meeting. Stu, are you doing that still? That one? I know you're doing that other stuff. And just continued to fine tune and hone how he went about the sales process, having more open, upfront conversation related to the project budget. So he just really focused on that. That is such a key thing for remodelers, and maybe for you guys to do, is to really improve your sales process. It's time for me to take a moment and insert a commercial here. How I can help you. If you're struggling with your sales process, there's a course. It's all locked and loaded. The recordings are all set. The action steps are all set. It is self-paced, and it is called Remodel Your Sales Process. If you go to remodelyoursalesprocess.com, you can learn all about it. And if you like the sound of it, as a Remodeler Show listener, you get 25% off. End commercial. Do look at that, though. Improving your sales process is such a huge key. Another thing that helped Stuart get from where he was to where he is today is he stopped making excuses for not understanding his numbers, and he dug in. Stopped making excuses about not understanding his numbers, and he dug in and he learned. There was, I think it was actually back at the tail end of 2019. Is it June already? This was back in November, December. And Stu and I were on the phone, and he was talking about some year-end tax planning stuff. And he is rattling through this. He's like, I was thinking about doing this and moving this money over here. But I think from a tax advantage standpoint, we could do this. And, I've maxed out this. I was thinking about doing that. He's just given me a college level, perhaps master program level education in why he's doing what he's doing, how he's doing certain things with his finances, with his P&L, with retained earnings, with WIP accounting. He's just given me a lesson. And at the end of it, I said, Stu, you know what's so cool is you rewind the clock 5 years, 6 years to when we started talking about this. We were going through the basics. Stuart, here's a P&L statement. Total sales, we got cost of goods sold in here. We got gross profit, we got expenses, we got net profit. Why is this expense down here in the expenses when it should be going up in cost of goods sold? Just the basic fundamentals, blocking and tackling, understanding how all that worked, understanding job costing, understanding markup. And here, years later, as he continued to educate himself, get better at it, take a weakness that he had and turn it into a strength, he is just like a totally different man, totally different business owner when it comes to understanding his numbers. That is such a critical thread, a common thread that I see between the difference between remodelers who are struggling and remodelers who are in that top 15, 20% in our industry. They are sick of not understanding their numbers. They're done with making excuses about it, and they dig in and they start to understand it and work at it. It's a process. It takes time. But that was such a key thing that Stu was able to do. 3 more things. Comments on Stu. Stu, you're getting more of a detailed time on the Remodeler show than anybody else who has given the intro so far. Congratulations. Another thing, a truly remarkable client experience. Another way of putting it, unrelenting client satisfaction. One thing when I look at how Stu's gone from where he is, and even when he started his business to where he is now, he is delivering a great client experience. He cares about the experience from start to finish that the client is going through. That comes down to communication. That comes down to just wanting it. That comes down to making sure the team has these expectations just as high as Stu does. This unrelenting client satisfaction. When you are giving your client a remarkable experience, they're going to remark about you. They are going to refer you at a higher level with more gusto. They are going to come back to you without question for other projects. And just understand that as you put more time, energy, resources, money, effort towards giving a better client experience, when you do that, that's also a tremendous help to your marketing and your sales, right? That's a marketing and sales expense just as much as it is a client satisfaction expense. So keep that in mind. That is such a key to building a successful, strong remodeling business, is to be giving a remarkable, excellent experience. And that's one thing that Stuart's really worked hard at. Another item, 2 more, is he has been very patient with his key hires. Sometimes we get to the point in the business where, this happens a lot when it comes to hiring. Thank you, everybody who's tuning in live. I'm seeing a few comments. We'll get to those in a second. I'd love for your takeaways on what you're hearing. I'd love for your hellos. I'd love for your questions, because we're about to get to the Ask Kyle Anything portion. He's very patient with his key hires. Isn't it true that so often as you get near needing a new hire, there's a little bit of this strain, right? You're getting to it and you're like, okay, our team is handling it. Now it's like, oh, this is too much for us. This is too much for us. Okay, we've got to hire somebody. Sometimes there might not be a lot of strain, but there's usually that tension between that time where, no, we can handle it, to, boy, we really need somebody new. And Stuart lived in that tension and maybe that stress and maybe that extra work a little bit longer than some of my other clients have. And his rhyme and reason, and as I look back on it, the strategy of that, whether it was known or not, was I'm going to be patient and make sure that when I hire somebody, I'm hiring the right person. There's a lot of times where I saw him turn down a potential hire, even though he really needed it, because he just didn't feel like it was the person. We're talking for key office manager hires. We're talking for key, lead carpenter hires, and just really being patient and waiting for that right person. This whole hire slow, fire fast aspect, that hire slow part is something that Stu really has excelled at, and it's really made a difference. His team is stronger because of it. His turnover is lower because of it, and he was just hiring slow, making sure he had the right people. He's still doing that. So I think that's been a key. And then the last comment I would have, which is probably the thing I'm most happy about for him and proud of, is I remember one of the things we were working on early on is related to evening appointments. When we started working on his sales process, I said, well, tell me more about, your schedule, the appointments you're taking. He's like, I'm doing a lot of evening appointments, and I said, oh, what does the missus think of that, Stu? She's not too happy about it. He had a couple of young kids at that point. And I said, well, let's fix that. And he's like, well, Kyle, the prospects I'm talking to, that's when they can meet. That's when they're able to meet. That's like, if I'm going to get an opportunity on these projects, I have to meet with them then. They work during the day. And I said, okay, that's how you've been approaching it. How about you try this? You still offer that to them, but it sounds like this. We offer evening appointments, and I offer evening appointments on Tuesday nights. That's the one night a week that my wife and I and the family know that Dad takes evening appointments on Tuesdays. I'm actually already booked for this Tuesday and next Tuesday. So I can book you. If you have to do an evening appointment, we can book out for 3 weeks on that Tuesday at 5:00. Or I have several appointment options available for that 3:00 time, for an 8 a.m. time. And wouldn't you know it, when you set a little bit of boundary to it, when you set a little bit of clarity and expectation to it, that person that said they have to meet in the evening all of a sudden said, well, no, we could work things out. We could do that 8 a.m. When could you do that? On Wednesday? All of a sudden, now he's in control of that. He's still giving the option of an evening appointment. The family, his wife, knows that that's the evening. They've got that plan, and it's part of their rhythm and cadence and part of their schedule. And he's protecting those other evenings. That made such a tremendous impact when he implemented that on his marriage, on his family time, on him being there as a dad. And he's just continued to lean into that. He has built a business that he controls versus it controlling him. And it's made him be able to, yes, be a better husband. Yes, be a better dad. But in his case, what he's probably most excited about has allowed him to fish more. So there you go. Thank you, Stu, for the intro. Pardon me for talking about you a lot there. But I think those were lessons and ideas and thoughts that are very applicable to a lot of remodelers. So cool. Excellent. That was probably the longest, deepest section that the Remodeler shows happen. Usually we bounce in one topic, bounce out another. Speaking of which, let's move on to the next part.
AKA, ask Kyle anything. It's time for your questions.
All right, let's see what we got. Let's see what we got here. Joanne, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Client experience is the key to charging more. I'm pulling up to see who that was. Brian, nice to see you, sir, on the Remodeler show. Brian made this comment. It shows his Facebook user because there's a little setting that you might see on this thread that you just have to approve to let StreamYard use your name when you're looking at it through Facebook. But I had Facebook open there, so I saw that it was none other than Brian Sebring. Client experience is the key to charging more. Yes, Brian. And I think what we could add to that is it's about delivering more value. If you look, talk, and act the same as everybody else they might be talking to, if you look, talk, and act the same, how am I going to make my decision on who to go with? Either option A or option B, you, if they're looking at two people. You look, talk, and act the same. The only decision I have left is, well, I'm going to go with the cheaper price. Everything else is the same. Why would I not just go with the cheaper price? But when you don't look and act and talk the same, when you have more value in what you offer, when you have built more know, like, and trust, when you have explained through the sales process all of the things you do that is more valuable to keep the project on time and on budget, and the design process they walk through, all sorts of things, you're able to charge more. And we need to charge more so that we can build a healthy, sustainable, strong remodeling business that pays you well. Because it's hard to run a remodeling business, and it's not fun to work your face off and not make good money, right? So yes, the client experience is such a key to charging more, and also just continuing to differentiate. All right, another person said here, this is Michael Anschel said, no weekend or evening meetings should be company policy. That's good, right? That's good. And the heart of what I was saying there is, maybe you do decide you want one evening appointment. Stu, I think nowadays, I don't think he's doing any. I think he's kind of made it that company policy. But here are the boundaries. You're setting up boundaries. When you leave it up to the customer and said, oh, would you like to meet at, an evening appointment? Would you like to meet, during the day? they're going to say evening. It's probably more convenient for them. It doesn't mess with their work hours, and it's just easier for them. When you limit the option there, and you heard like how I did it, where look, the next 2 weeks, that Tuesday evening appointment's full, or we can book it out 3 weeks. If they say, no, let's book it out 3 weeks, then they were probably pretty legit. It's going to be hard for them not to meet then. But the majority of people will find other options and will start to work their schedule around. What a good way to see how serious they are too. Good. You can charge more if you're transparent in your pricing and don't mark things up. Oh, Michael, I posted something on Facebook this morning. I think I saw, Michael, I saw on Rob Bauer's page, you guys were talking about markup. People, I shared 1% markup increase, keeping it simple there. If you go back to Remodelers on the Rise, you're going to have to go back several episodes, 10 episodes now. There's an interview I did with Michael Anschel. Not only is he a good-looking gentleman, he's also really smart. And he has an approach of very transparent pricing. And it's very compelling, interesting, and it might be something for some of you remodelers to consider. We have found the more we charge, the more seriously they take us. That's a good one. Dropping gems there. Going back to Jim, was Stu self-taught, or did his accountant educate him on his numbers? Where or how did he knock it out of the park? Well, part of the knocking out of the park was piece by piece by piece by piece, brick by brick by brick, right? Learning and learning. So his education, as far as how he got there, we've worked closely together for years. So we've spent a lot of time digging into the P&L, digging into markup, looking at job cost reports. So that was just, he hired a coach, a mildly good one, I would say, in myself, that allowed him to get there. As far as where he was before, I think it was a very similar story of, yes, he had a CPA that kind of took care of the annual books, but that was not teaching him. Your CPA, by the way, if when you have those meetings, be asking questions. It drives me bonkers when one of my clients, goes and does their meetings with their CPA, has all these questions, but doesn't bring them up. CPAs a lot of them don't naturally teach. They're going to tell you, they're going to maybe explain it a little bit. Don't leave that CPA appointment until you fully understand why and what, especially when it comes to the tax side of things. Tell me again, CPA friend, why am I an S Corp versus an LLC? Tell me the benefits of that again. They have all that knowledge. Sometimes you have to draw it out of them. But no, Stu was kind of self-taught as far as, where he was before. And then it was a business coach arrangement that really helped. Cool. All right. Got some activity and action on the Ask Kyle Anything, but we got to keep moving. We got other things to get to. There we go. Ruffling papers again. That was a good Ask Kyle Anything. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for that help. We're going to get back to here, and I'm going to save. We've talked about numbers a decent amount. I'm going to save the know your numbers until tomorrow's show as we round out the week. If you listen back to the last few days, I dug in and shared a bit about job costing a couple days ago. Yesterday, I dug in a little bit and did a little teaching on P&L statements. And tomorrow, I'll get into the business budget. I'll give it enough time to do that. Little technology item. Ooh, I had another sound effect I wanted to test out. That means we're moving on to the technology section of things. We've talked about a few different technologies the last few days, one being followupthen.com. A couple days ago, we talked about Loom, a really powerful and helpful little tool to record your video and your screen at the same time. So many different ways to use it. Today, I just want to talk about not something in particular, but there's a lot of my clients I've noticed that just don't understand how podcasts work. If you have an iPhone, there's this little app that says, if you're seeing it right there, if you're seeing it on the screen, it's that purple one that says podcasts. You either download, and I think you have to download, it doesn't come automatic, but it's kind of a built into your iPhone podcast app. What you can do from there is you can subscribe to different podcasts. For example, yours truly has a podcast called Remodelers on the Rise. Remodelers on the Rise. When you search that in your podcast app, you're going to find that. You can click subscribe. Now you're going to be notified when a new episode comes up. Doing it within a podcast app, you can click play. If you receive a call, it stops it. You take the call. When you hang up from the call, it picks up where you left off. There's just a lot of convenience items there. There's so many good podcasts on so many different topics. And I've just found that a lot of people don't really understand how it works. So if you're on an iPhone, download that podcast app, search around for some things, subscribe, get used to how you play things, how it works. You could leave a review on Remodelers on the Rise. I'd love that. And then if you don't have an iPhone, first of all, what's the matter with you? And second of all, there are plentiful amounts of different apps that you can download to listen to podcasts. So that's something, if you've heard this podcast thing, I think there's a lot of people that just don't understand how it works. But it's such a nice way to either passively listen to things while one of my clients was just driving back from a vacation on Florida. He's like, man, I caught up on so many podcasts during the drive. When you're working out, if you're working out in the field, sometimes it's helpful, or you're just actively listening to it. Cool. So there's your little technology item of the day. What time is it? It is 26 after. We're going to hit one with a sales process item. Hang on, we're going to hit that chime again. Your sales process. This is just a statement I want to state. A statement I want to state. Get your step-by-step remodeling process in writing. And practice presenting it to prospects. It's such a key part of the sales process. If I am a homeowner and I call you and I say, I'm interested in a kitchen remodeling project, what's in my head is either what I watched on HGTV and kind of know there. What's in my head is previous experience I've had with contractors or remodelers, which is probably clunky. And what's in my head is I'm probably expecting you to say, oh, cool. Well, let's set up a time for an appointment and then we'll come out and we'll give you an estimate. That's what's in so many of your prospects' heads. But your process, correct me if I'm wrong, is most likely different than that. And we need to educate them on how the design and project development part works. We need to educate them just simply on, the first step in our process is this phone call, where we can get to know each other a little bit. I can hear more about your project, start to see if it might be a fit for and something we can help with. And you're also hearing a little bit about us to see if we might be a fit for you, vice versa. And I want to just tell you about the first few steps in our process. The next step is an in-person appointment. And what we do at that meeting is the next step after that is we can do full out design and project development. You need to slow down and educate them on the steps. Getting this in writing where there's a page on your website that says our process and I as a homeowner can read through it and understand it. Getting this in writing so that you can email it to me between the initial phone call and the in-person meeting. Getting this in writing so you can bring it with you. Getting it in writing is a huge, helpful thing in your sales process. And I would say, now listen to this, 44% of all statistics are made up. Okay. But with that said, I would say that 80% of the remodelers listening to this episode of Remodelers on the Rise do not have their remodeling process written out. That's pretty accurate stat. So that is something that I would encourage you to do. Just start by put the heading. And then the next step, what's the next main step? 2, get the basic high-level outline of it figured out. Put some bullet points underneath each. That's a good start. That'll get you moving. Cool. All right. So we've got our 2-minute warning. There's a man that talks about this. Listen.
It's the 2-minute warning.
That's all he's got to say about it. It's the 2-minute warning. The 2-minute warning, what that is an opportunity for me to recap something and for you to share, what did you learn today? What was something that you learned or you heard today? Love to hear you type that in on the Facebook stream or the YouTube stream. 80% of the time, it works 93% of the time. That is true. That gets to the heart of that 44%, 47% of all statistics are made up thing I said. What would I like you to hear? I'd like you to hear, because I spent a good chunk of time on, number one, raise your stinking markup. 1%, just 1% today. I just made you thousands of dollars this year, and that feels good. Tell me if you did that after you do that, please. But the big takeaway here is what I want you to kind of hear, maybe in that story I shared of Stu, is to go from feeling kind of like the business is running you, yes, making money, but not really making money, not understanding your numbers, not really understanding what the business side of the remodeling business looks like. And over hard work, some coaching, some direction, being able to transform into somebody who has built a really profitable business. It is step by step. It is possible. It is doable. And a lot of you are probably at different phases and different parts of that journey. Keep moving towards it. Keep moving towards being a better business owner and remodeler. And then Michael is chiming in. Raise your profit margin 1%. Yes. Now a 1%, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong. At that first part of the scale, if I'm at 1% improvement, that's just like a 1.01 markup, which doesn't have the same ring to it. But once we get up there, if I'm at a 20% margin and I want to get to a 21% margin, that's different than a markup. So if you're totally confused by that, type in margin versus markup table. Type that in Google and then pull up this table that shows markup and margin and study it. And ask me questions about that on the next episode of the Remodeler Show, which is tomorrow at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. One more person, treat the business like a business. Hire someone to run it so you can do all the work. Sometimes that's a good option. Sometimes people prefer to do that. Other times, they want to hire so that people can take care of, the vice versa, the other aspect of that. If you heard something you liked about on today's show, do me a favor. Do yourself a favor. Go out there and implement it. Talk to you tomorrow. See you guys.